Good afternoon, everyone. Alyssa Corum and Justin Nielsen here with a look at the stock market today. And it was a weak day, broadly speaking, Justin, with growth stocks getting hit particularly hard, and the areas of strength are telling as well.
Yes, absolutely. So basically a lot of volatility and very little breadth, but we'll go ahead and take a look at Pfizer, Arista Networks, because it's not all growth stocks that are getting hit. And then also national storage, a lot of the self-storage REITs looking interesting.
All right. Well, we will do that. First, let's check in on the major indexes. So here is a look at the NASDAQ composite, falling 1.4% today, and followed behind the Russell 2000, which was down about 1%. The S&P 500 down 0.9%, same for the Dow. So we have the NASDAQ here closing at around 15,413, which is not too far above this 50-day moving average, Justin.
That seems like it's gonna be the next area to look at. We've had a lot of back and forth action. I mean, we had a really strong gap up last week, and a lot of people might have been saying, "Oh, well, rally's back on," but not so fast. This is why we like to look for that follow-through day concept to kind of confirm the strength of the rally, and we haven't gotten that yet. So yeah, it's the 50-day moving average line is a area where we'd like to see support. Keep in mind, we've got some things coming up here. We've got the Fed meeting that's going to happen tomorrow, and on Wednesday it's going to wrap up. A lot of people are probably waiting to see, hey, what's going to happen exactly with the speed of the taper. They've certainly projected that is happening, but the speed with which it happens is the next piece of the puzzle that people are wanting to look at. And the S&P 500, if we just look at that real quick, just last week, you might have been looking at it and saying, well, gosh, it's a new closing high. Is there really a problem here? It's holding above the 21-day moving average line. And I think that there is a little bit more strength in other areas outside of growth, but still there's a lot of breadth that is lacking out there. This is still something where very few stocks have been supporting the strength in the indexes. So when you get this back and forth action, it can be very difficult to make headway. And what can easily happen is you find yourself, buying stocks because it looks like, oh, maybe the rally's back on. Then the indexes fall, stocks are getting hit, you back away, and then the next day it seems like, well, maybe I should be buying those back. And you can quickly, get this death of 1,000 cuts as you just slowly eke, little losses that can turn into big losses if you keep on doing it for too long.
That's right. Not the type of environment that we want to see or feel confident in getting aggressive. So maybe the Fed will change that, be the catalyst there, but until then, and that's still a big if, we need to be careful out there.
Absolutely. And, you might as well just go ahead and real quickly show FFTY. This is, really what we use for our proxy of growth. And you can see that, while the indexes were getting hit, even though that they were bouncing on Friday a little bit, this is one that was not bouncing, and it saw further destruction today. Again, a lot of growth stocks getting hit out there.
Yeah, but the areas of strength, Justin, utilities.
Yeah, utilities.
Big today. So
yeah, exactly.
Another sign about the kind of market we're in.
Yeah, exactly. You look at this, and if you put your thumb on the name of this, I'd be looking at this and saying, oh, look at this strength. But take that step back and look at the weekly chart. Right. XLU is not where it's at. This is not something that moves. And look, if you need to be invested, sure, I'd probably rather be in utilities than a growth name right now. But as individual investors, we don't need to be invested. I'd rather be in cash rather than being in something that underperforms the S&P 500 long term. It's just, I feel like cash is a safer spot, and I'll just wait for a better opportunity to get into things. But yeah, XLU just doesn't really move. XLRE, we can take a look at that. That's also been showing strength lately. So we'll get to that a little bit later. But also XLP, which is the consumer staples. This is an area where, again, you look long term. This is not something that typically will lead a market. This is just showing you how there's kind of a flight to safety. Yes, exactly.
That's exactly right. Okay, well, let's check in on Pfizer PFE moving on news today, as you noted, Justin. So up about 4.6% today. And it's had a pretty big couple of weeks here. And even in the recent pullback, was able to find support at the 21-day line. Not a whole lot of damage.
Yeah, and a lot of times these cup bases, if you look at how it just came up straight up, off of the bottom there, really strong. Sometimes that makes me nervous. Getting into that, it feels a little extended. I do like a little bit of a pause, and we did get that last week. That pullback to the 21-day moving average line, I think, was a nice pullback. Got support exactly where you'd want to see it, right at the top of that cup base, and then if you drew a little trend line kind of from that little 55.70 top, we were breaking that downtrend today. So, a number of things that are kind of looking interesting about this. We did put it on Swing Trader this morning. It also had a number of news items out. So one of the things is that they bought Arena Pharmaceuticals, and ARNA is the ticker symbol on that. So this is something where everyone's kind of focused on the coronavirus, and certainly UBS upgraded them today. And part of that is because they see, look, there's a 50 billion COVID franchise estimate that they're putting on this. So not just the vaccine, but also their oral antiviral, that they have now. So between those, they're seeing a $50 billion market here. So yeah, that's important. But this Arena Pharmaceuticals purchase, I think, reminds people that this isn't a one-hit wonder here. They've got, just real quickly, pull up ARNA. And this is one of the troubles with biotechs is you can have something like this that's in clinical trials and everything like that, and it can be in this downtrend because there's uncertainty. That's not something I'd be buying right now personally, but for Pfizer, having it purchase this, getting it into this inflammatory space, immunology space. If anyone that's had like ulcerative colitis or some of these things, they've got some experimental things that Arena has been working on, and this just kind of expands Pfizer's pipeline. So again, they have a lot more than just coronavirus, and this is kind of a reminder of that. So this acquisition, I think a lot of people are looking at the potential for it, but there's also that coronavirus part to it, whereas there's an Oxford study that came out, University of Oxford, where the vaccines are showing some not as effective against Omicron, but there is some optimism over the boosters and what those can do. So Pfizer does have that coronavirus news component to it, but other things as well.
So a lot of positive catalysts here, Justin, but in terms of a swing trade, where do you set your stop on something like this? Because it is news driven at the moment. We've seen a lot of rotation. Volatility is elevated at this time. Where do you get out of this?
So at the very least, and this is where the technical tab on MarketSmith can kind of help you out. So if you just put out that related information, go to the technical tab, you can see that this is 4% above the 10-day moving average line, 7% above the 21-day. I think the 21-day it makes a lot of sense right here. But again, if in this environment you wanted to be a little bit tighter, you could go with that 10-day moving average line.
All right. Thank you, Justin. And like you said, not all growth stocks are getting dragged down. So Arista Networks, definitely a standout here. ANET up again today by 1.2%. It's been on a little bit of a hot streak lately, a potential early entry with a retake of the 21-day line. But at the very least, Justin, it seems like now is the time to be building your watch list and focusing on stocks with those standout relative strength lines.
Absolutely. And this is certainly one. You see how strong it acted off after that earnings report. And you look, how much was that gap up? If you just click on that, you can see, okay, 20% gap up. That can be scary to maybe getting in right there. But what I like to see is how does it handle itself after that? And to me, ANET showed really good action. It just really kind of held tight. So basically what that tells me is some catalyst came out in that earnings report that made everyone revalue this company, and they were comfortable with that higher valuation. Everyone thought that whatever happened in that earnings report was strong enough that it deserved that higher valuation because it held those gains. And now if you take a step back to the weekly chart, we have what's formed here as a flat base. It just really pretty much held tight, kept the majority of those gains. and you see that red dot, right? I mean, not red dot, the blue dot on the
well, there's a lot of red out there today.
There's a lot of red out there, but this had blue dot, meaning that relative strength line is at new high territory, right in that base, or at a breakout. So that's a positive sign. That's one of the things we like to see. It really got support right there at the 10-week moving average line. You can see that this held up and really let that line catch up to it. So I see a lot of positive technical action there. If you want a little bit more on the fundamental side, Reinhard Krause, he wrote a nice stock of the day article on this today. So you might check that out, because this is, again, one that we saw that was setting up. And what they do is they've got the switches. So if you've got data centers, which Microsoft has a bunch of them, they've got the primary source of the 100 gigabit network, switches. And now there is new technology coming out with 400 gigabit. So maybe they lose some share, but right now they are a dominant player there, and it's, showing up in the stock.
It sure is, Justin. And let's also take a look at NSA. We mentioned XLRE earlier. So here is another blue dot special in the REIT group. So we have NSA up about 3% to kick off the week.
Yeah. And normally, look, REITs are not where we're typically focused. We're really looking at growth. And REIT, of course, stands for Real Estate Investment Trust. But look at the relative strength line on this. As opposed to when we were looking at XLU or XLP, that had like these poor relative strength lines. This one actually has a strong relative strength line. And so if you just go ahead and highlight the yield too, that's over on the left-hand side, we've got a 2.4% yield. So there's probably some people looking at this and saying, look, I can get growth out of this. I can get capital appreciation in the stock price, as well as a 2.4% yield that beats the S&P 500. Hey, that's not too bad. Not to mention that self-storage is just a hot area right now. A lot of people do need that extra storage. And so, and you know what? It's funny, because my wife loves OfferUp, and we're going to self-storage things all the time, because there's these little pop-ups where people are selling stuff out of these storage units. So there's a lot of different ways in which these are being used. And again, the chart here, if you didn't tell me that this was a REIT, I would say, look, this looks like a good growth stock that has had some tight areas lately and could go on another potential run. And National Storage is not alone. This is one among many of the self-storage REITs that keep on popping up on our radar. And you have a number of alerts on your MarketSmith. One of those was probably NSA today. It showed up as a breaking out. It's also, as you mentioned, a blue dot, relative strength line. So it's got a lot of things going for it.
It does. Worthy of attention for sure. And Justin, please, would you talk about the webinar that is coming up tomorrow? With all this talk about early entries working so great this year versus breakouts, what do we need to know about these alternative entries?
Yeah, so Scott St. Clair and I are going to be doing a webinar tomorrow. That's at 11:30 Pacific time. You can go to www.investors.com/webinar to register for that. And you might be asking, well, why would you guys even be talking about buying right now? You're a little bit negative on the market, and why focus on beyond breakouts and alternative buy strategies, more aggressive buy strategies? Well, guess what? We think the sun is going to come up tomorrow. Well, maybe not tomorrow, but eventually. This rally will turn. We'll eventually have our shot again. This is the best time to be getting your watch lists or learning new skills, so that when that market does turn, you're ready and you've got some more tools in your toolbox.
So great. Well, looking forward to that, Justin. Thanks for those details. And we will see everyone there tomorrow, we hope. But also before that, we'll catch you on IBD Live tomorrow. So we hope everyone tunes in, investors.com/IBD Live, where we will be joined by David Ryan. It'll be great to get his updated thoughts on this ever-changing market. So we'll see you there, and right back here after the close as well. We'll see you tomorrow.